Thanks for joining me. Tonight, Anthony Albanese stuck between melons and a hard place. Critics from all sides of politics call on him just to apologise to Japan and Australia and move on. But he and his so-called female-friendly cabinet remain in denial. Climate and Energy Minister Chris Bowen boasts about subsidised batteries and falling wholesale power prices, while most of his renewable projects are scrapped and actual power bills continue to rise. Pauline Hanson will join me live to talk immigration, melons and my new doco about the fight for the right. Tom Switzer on Trump and the Middle East, Esther Kraku in London and the Wednesday Wrangle with James and Justin. Let's get cracking. Incredibly, after days of controversy, weeks after his puerile exchange where he mocked a special gift of melons from the first female Prime Minister of Japan, Anthony Albanese is still refusing to apologise.
Millions of Australians have now seen, with their own eyes, the Prime Minister's appalling behaviour on the Bush Deep podcast. Now he embarrasses all of us by refusing to apologise to the Prime Minister of Japan. Why won't the Prime Minister stop treating us like fools, man up and say sorry to the Prime Minister of Japan?
Order. My office and my team have spent 4 years carefully rebuilding our relationships in the region. We take our relationship seriously, including our regular engagement with Japan.
This episode has exposed Albanese's poor judgment and lack of diplomatic common sense. We can only wonder what this visiting delegation must have made of all this in Parliament today.
I'm pleased to advise the House that on the floor of Parliament today is a historic delegation from the National Parliament of Timor-Leste, led by the first female President of the National Assembly and the first time a President of the Assembly has ever sat on the floor of our Parliament, Her Excellency Ms Maria Fernanda Ley, and an all-female parliamentary delegation. Welcome to Question Time. Welcome to Australia.
We can only hope the delegation from East Timor didn't bring any fruit. The Prime Minister has also had his hypocrisy laid bare over respect for women. And this has seen his senior female cabinet ministers demonstrate their own double standards when it comes to casual sexism, Labor's self-proclaimed superiority on women's issues and its claim to hold great respect for the role of women in political debate.
Penny Wong's hypocrisy, Tanya Plibersek's hypocrisy, Catherine King's hypocrisy is now on display. Their double standards are there for all Australians to see. It's their Prime Minister who's been crude and dirty, and this is an incident, Tom, now formally raised by the Japanese government. As I said, I want to hear directly from our Foreign Minister. Did you raise this personally with Mr Albanese? Have you raised it with the Japanese government? But more than that, did you tell your Prime Minister to apologise for his crude and dirty comments that just haven't embarrassed him? They have now embarrassed Australia.
Yeah, Labor ministers, including the Minister for Women, Katie Gallagher, have defended the Prime Minister.
The comments and the remarks from the Prime Minister have been misinterpreted. The Prime Minister is very clear that he did not mean for those comments to be interpreted in the way they have by some media outlets and by our political opponents.
Yeah, everybody's just misinterpreted his comments. And Penny Wong, who has long taken the moral high ground over women's issues and is directly involved in smoothing over any diplomatic damage as Foreign Minister, well, she too is trying to argue that any outrage here is confected.
I would encourage you to not participate in the confection of a diplomatic issue, which we are seeing from those less responsible on your side of the Parliament.
Look, I said yesterday this episode was more akin to Sir Les Patterson than a real Prime Minister. So see if you can pick the difference.
I do a chest problem.
Yeah, I do actually.
A massage might help, darling.
Do you think you could sort one out later?
Oh, I think I could, honey.
The Japanese Prime Minister brought a melon.
Did she smuggle it?
I don't know.
Oh, I'm expecting...
Got a couple of melons.
She brought two.
She brought two, as you do.
She just came in looking like Pamela Anderson.
She brought two.
Yes, really.
And they're beautiful.
Sir Les Albanese. It's crass, it was disrespectful to Senai Takaichi and to all of Japan, and it has diminished Australia. Yet Albanese is in denial and copping it from all angles, including the teal left and the populist right.
If I was the PM, I'd pick up the phone to the Japanese Prime Minister and apologise to her on this one.
It's disgusting what he's done, and he cannot apologise, and that is not leadership. If you get it wrong, you call it out and you say, I got it wrong. And he's continued with the lie, which has made it worse. I feel for that Prime Minister of Japan, Takaichi. I think it's wrong that the way she's been treated.
How about that? Albanese has blown this so badly, he's got Pauline Hanson and Monique Ryan on a Unity ticket. Time for an update on what the Albanese Labor government and its Climate and Energy Minister Chris Bowen are doing to our energy grid. Remember, energy is the lifeblood of everything that's made us prosperous and comfortable. Whether it's schools, hospitals, farms, homes, cities, towns, factories, offices, sport, jobs, health, universities or entertainment. Everything about our enviable civilisation and our nation comes back to energy. And Australia's great economic advantage of the past century or so has been cheap and reliable electricity. That is no longer the case. Our governments have prioritised reducing emissions over providing affordable and reliable power. And they've done so because they like to pretend that they're saving the planet from a climate catastrophe. So how is Chris Bowen going against his own promises and grand pronouncemements? First, let's get cost out of the way.
Energy bills, which will be $275 for the average house, lower in 2025 than today.
Reducing power prices by $275.
Yeah, as we know, he could not have gotten this promise any more wrong. He couldn't have broken it any more badly. Not only have power prices failed to be cut by $275 a year, they went up $275 a year. And then they went up another $275 a year, and they've gone up yet further $275 on top of that, putting Bowen and Labor about $1,000 a year in arrears of their electricity price promise. OK, let's look at more of Bowen's plan.
Australia can lead the world in offshore wind. Victoria can lead Australia in offshore wind. And Gippsland can lead Victoria in offshore wind.
Yeah, Bowen has announced offshore wind projects in Victoria, South Australia and New South Wales. But now, after more than 4 years in office, Labor has not seen a single offshore wind project built in any of his 6 declared areas, despite Labor's plans often riding roughshod over local objections. So it's been good news in the end for those local communities. But all the fuss has been over nothing because these projects just don't stack up. Who would have guessed, hey? As most of us said all along, this stuff just not add up. They throw our money at it, but it still doesn't work. So, how about green hydrogen?
We'll be leading the global green hydrogen revolution. Only Labor has the plan to ensure that Australia is part of and is leading that hydrogen revolution.
The revolution. Labor, federally and in state governments, has promised billions of dollars of taxpayers' money in grants and subsidies to kick off so-called green hydrogen projects. And one by one, they've fallen over. In Queensland, at Gladstone, in the Hunter Valley in New South Wales, in the West and near Whyalla in South Australia, project after project, billions after billions, all going up like a hydrogen airship. And as if all of this isn't wild enough, how about the idea of exporting solar power to Southeast Asia? The Sun Cable project was going to roll out vast areas of solar panels in the Northern Territory and feed it to Singapore via undersea cables.
Sun Cable has enormous potential for Australia as a renewable energy export powerhouse.
But surprise, surprise, this bizarre plan also fell over. It was backed by billionaires Twiggy Forrest and Mike Cannon-Brookes, but it went into administration a couple of years ago and it's now being floated again by Cannon-Brookes. Let's hope not a single dollar of taxpayers' money is ever involved. So there it is. Not a great record, is it? Especially if you add in Snowy Hydro 2.0, a project started under Malcolm Turnbull but embraced by Labor, currently running about 8 years overdue and $20 billion over budget. And Chris Bowen, the minister who backs all these grand schemes, all these pathetic white elephants, he is the same minister who says the tried and tested technology of nuclear power is too hard and too expensive for Australia. So about 30 other developed economies around the world have got that one wrong, apparently. And instead, Australia will lead the way with imaginary offshore wind, imaginary green hydrogen and imaginary Snowy 2.0 schemes, as well as an imaginary solar electricity cable to Singapore, as if we don't need more electricity right here in Australia. This is ongoing national energy self-harm. And the vandals in chief are Anthony Albanese and Chris Bowen. Let's go to Canberra now and catch up with the One Nation leader, Pauline Hanson. Pauline, thanks for joining us. How about this melon gate? It's got you in agreement with Monique Ryan, of all people. Why won't the Prime Minister just roll over and apologise? He says we've got it all wrong.
Well, you tell me, because we can't work it out. And, you know, if you want to be leader of this nation, then admit when you get it wrong, and especially the most disgraceful thing. I think what he said about Kylie Minogue wasn't really nice, considering, you know, his wife, he's just newly married, and to make that comment about Kylie Minogue. But I think the big issue here, Chris, is the way he's regarded to the Prime Minister of Japan, who is an ally of us, you know, trading partner to the tune of about $34 billion a year, and yet the way he has discussed about the melons and his reaction to that comment, the podcast, that he should never have done in the first place. He was poorly advised. So it's a shame that it's come to this, and he cannot understand. Just give a simple apology to the Prime Minister of Japan, Takaichi, and just say, I've got it wrong, I do apologise on behalf of the Australian people. But he's put us all in this boat. You know, who knows what the Japanese people think about Australia, and we're all in this sinking raft with him.
Yeah, even if you take away the double entendre about the melons, he was asked about some of the worst gifts he's ever mentioned, and he proffers up this recent gift from Japan. It's just so rude to a country that's supposed to be a key partner.
Yeah, and he couldn't even declare them, so either he didn't think they were worth the value that they are, and I know because I have seen the value of these melons, and they're a precious gift, you know, to the Japanese people. It is a precious gift, and yet he hasn't declared it. And then he tells us he only got 2. Well, then he got 4 melons. So, you know, it's just the whole thing around all this. He's belittling this beautiful woman, and what I've heard is she's a lovely lady, and her position in the world as Prime Minister of a very prominent country, and he should be apologising. Wake up to yourself, Albanese. Apologise to the Japanese Prime Minister. You got it wrong, mate. You got it very wrong.
I'll tell you what, it just occurs to me, having interviewed you last week for this documentary, The Fight for the Right, one of the key criticisms against you and your current resurgence through One Nation is that you don't have the experience or the gravitas to be Prime Minister. Well, Albanese's not really filling the job with a lot of decorum at the moment, is he?
Well, I don't think he is. You know, at least people get the truth out of me, and I think that people trust me more than what they do our current Prime Minister. Everyone knows where they stand with me, and I am quite willing to say if I don't get it right, I'll admit that I got it wrong. You know, this is what a leader is about. You have to be there for what's right by the country. He's done the wrong thing by the country here, Chris. He's put us in you know, the dog basket, to say, with his reluctance to apologise and say, well, I've got it wrong, I've embarrassed the Prime Minister of Japan, I should never have said those things, and I do owe you a deepest apology.
Let's go to the latest News24 Pulse opinion poll, because it's fascinating viewing at the moment. A pox on both the houses really for the major parties, with Labor now still below 30% at 28% and the Coalition at 22%, One Nation at 24%. These are amazing times when you see those numbers in that direction. But this is One Nation coming down a bit and the Coalition closing the gap. Do you feel that the surge to One Nation might have reached its peak?
Look, Chris, I'm very buoyed by the support that we are getting. There's a lot of people out there, and there's margin of error in that as well. And a lot of people still won't disclose who they're going to vote for. And I think the true polling day is on election day, and that's the day for it. You know, people are starting to understand, wake up to what One Nation stands for, looking at our policies. So, look, who knows, has it peaked or hasn't peaked? I'm not listening to all the rumours by some of these media outlets out there and what they're saying. Let's just get on and do the job and deal with the issues. People are sick and tired of seeing these polls every week. They really are. They say, for Christ's sake, stop talking about yourselves and let's see what you want to do for us.
Yeah, well, let's talk about some of the issues behind this. Certainly immigration has been a key issue for you and a key reason for people going to One Nation. The Coalition starting to make up ground in those polls because they've started to get, I would suggest one of the reasons is because they've adopted a stronger immigration policy. Here's their Shadow Housing Minister, Andrew Bragg, on immigration numbers today.
The shortfall between number of houses built and the number of people coming in is 350 to 400,000, about that. And so you need to have a norm somewhere around 180,000 to bridge that gap over the forward estimates period. Like, that's just the range.
So starting to put a number there on what they would reduce migration to in this country. You've put numbers on this as well. Do you think that the Coalition are matching you on immigration?
No, they're not going to match us, and they won't match us on deportation of the illegals that are in the country, or visa holders, or the students, because they'll be beholden to the universities and those graduates and their families coming in the country. So they've been given an opportunity of being in government over the years. They had high immigration coming into the country as well. The only ones that people can trust to deal with immigration is One Nation. Chris, we've taken the Coalition and the Labor Party kicking and screaming on many issues, but the Coalition, who was the first one that came out against the voice of Parliament? One Nation, not the Nationals, not the Liberal Party. Then it was also about climate change, about net zero. It was One Nation. They've had to dump that because they've got it wrong with the public. They won't get out of the Paris Agreement, so you're still bound to all this climate change BS that we're having to deal with and high energy costs. So these are important issues to the Australian people. The Liberal Party have no idea, understanding of how they're going to turn this around. Even big business, small businesses, they haven't addressed their concerns either. That needs to be also will be high on my agenda to try and do what I can to give them the hope that they can stay in their business. It's going to be profitable for them. And a lot of these businesses have gone under the current government. Over 1,400 industries manufacturing, 50,000 small businesses gone insolvent.
I want to mention the documentary, The Fight for the Right. It airs here on News24 Tuesday week, Tuesday the 25th of August at 7 p.m. I spent a bit of time with you on the doco last week in Melbourne. We're still putting the final edit together. But our interview there in Melbourne was for about an hour. It was a pretty in-depth interview. There was only you, myself, a cameraman and producer in the room. I won't dob in which one of them. One of them got the impression you might walk out during that interview. Did you ever feel like running off in the middle of the interview?
No, I didn't. I was just cranky with you at one stage, to be honest. Yeah, because, Chris, and I'll tell the people now, I don't know if you're going to put it in the interview, but you attempted to get me on a gotcha moment. And, you know, to ask me who was the Prime Minister of Indonesia and who's the Prime Minister of Japan. And I knew it was Takaichi, but I couldn't think of her name. And the whole fact is, you know, I'm fed up with these gotcha moments. And you said, well, you might be Prime Minister of the country. Well, yeah, guess what, Chris? I'm not the Prime Minister now, and I'm dealing with the issues in Australia. If I'm ever in that position, then I will deal with who are the leaders of these nations.
Good.
Maybe they have a turnover of their Prime Ministers as often as we do in Australia.
Maybe. Well, that's interesting. There was plenty in that interview, and there'll be plenty in the documentary, and there certainly wasn't much there that could be called gotcha. But given you've mentioned those questions, have you brushed up? Have you found out who the President of Indonesia is?
No, I haven't, Chris. I told you. Why do I need to? Chris, I'm dealing with the issues that are important to the Australian people. I don't need to know who the Prime Minister of Indonesia is, or Cambodia, or all these other countries. Or I don't need to know that. I'll know it if it is important to me. I'm more interested in what's happening in rural and regional Australia and to the farming sector, agricultural sector, and what's happening for the cost of living for the Australian people. And high on my list is mass migration. I'll deal with the issues that are important to Australians, not who is the Prime Minister of Indonesia. And I'm sure they're all running to their you know, they're all wanting to have a look at it. Who's the Prime Minister like they did with me? Are you xenophobic? So anyway.
Well,
Most
Pauline, we've gone over time again. Thanks for joining me, and I can't wait to get the doco out there to everyone. Pauline Hanson there, live from Canberra, and the fight for the right, Tuesday the 25th of August, here on News 24. I better get on with the next issue, and we're going to go back to energy. I gave you that update at the top of the program about Labor and Chris Bowen's energy disaster, but listen to the Climate and Energy Minister, Chris Bowen, pretending all of this is OK today, because he's spending billions of dollars of your money subsidising home batteries for well-off Australians.
Australia is now the home battery capital of the world, Mr Speaker. To put this in perspective,
Order, the member for Barker.
Australians have put in 14.1 gigawatt hours worth of home battery capacity in just over 12 months. The United States has a total of 9 gigawatt hours of home battery capacity. Australians have put in more home batteries in the last 12 months than the United States has put in history, Mr Speaker. That is the Albanese government and Australians working together to reduce their bills and emissions, reducing bills for themselves and reducing bills for everyone else. And batteries have played a huge role in seeing the 47% reduction in wholesale prices in Australia over the last 12 months.
Wholesale prices going down, we pay retail prices, and they're going through the roof because with renewables we have to pay for extra transmission and storage and backup, of course. What an insult there from Chris Bowen. Let me bring in Zoe Hilton, the spokesperson for Affordable Energy Australia. Welcome to the program again, Zoe.
Thanks, Ben.
Look, this is just such spin from Bowen, boosting about the number of home batteries. Well, they're government-subsidised home batteries that you have to have a lot of money yourself to put in anyway, and boosting about wholesale prices. Wholesale prices don't help any of us.
Exactly. I am sick to death of governments taking money through our taxes and then giving it back to us through energy subsidies and calling that affordability. That is not energy affordability. That is sleight of hand. And I just think it is unacceptable, and governments need to stop pretending that subsidising the heck out of a particular energy source is going to make our bills go down. It won't. It will just hurt taxpayers more. And the thing is, batteries, they don't actually give you any more energy in the grid. And so, yes, you can put in a whole bunch of batteries to shift wind and solar power around, but at the end of the day, we need more 24/7 reliable power, and batteries just are not going to give us that. They're going to run out in a couple of hours.
And all of us, our taxes are funding the subsidies, as well as the subsidies of the large-scale renewable energy projects and all the rest of it. It is frightening. And the subsidies to major industries to keep them going because they're crippled by high energy costs. It is frightening. I went through at the top of the program some of the key issues that Labor have put out there. One, for instance, is offshore wind. So many times they've told us that offshore wind is an answer. They've announced special areas for that, special zones. They've announced controversial projects. None of them have got off the ground.
Exactly, and offshore wind is super, super, super expensive. It is one of the most expensive ways to make electricity known to mankind, and that is why these projects are not getting off the ground. And when we look at the UK and Denmark, countries that do have offshore wind, they're having to strike these contract for difference deals, these subsidy deals for $170, $180 per megawatt hour. In Australia, we're going to be looking at over $200 per megawatt hour or thereabouts for offshore wind, because we don't have any of these projects. They're incredibly difficult to build. And so when you look at Victorian wholesale prices, speaking about wholesale prices, they last year were about $78 per megawatt hour. So when you compare $78 per megawatt hour to $200 per megawatt hour, that is the difference that is going to have to be paid. You can't lower prices by putting in an energy source that is far, far higher, more than double the current prices being paid. It makes no sense.
Well, the other one is green hydrogen, right? This is supposed to save industry and help us to have an alternative fuel to fossil fuels in mobile transport. Billions of dollars in subsidies and grants, not a single project getting up.
Exactly. The only projects that ever work with green hydrogen are heavily subsidised. And even Orica, they received a subsidy deal, and that was where they were putting hydrogen into their industrial processes. They weren't even having to transport it. And even that made absolutely no sense economically. They cannot make it stack up without incredible government subsidies. It just makes no sense.
Well, this is the thing that gets me, right? We understand they want to reduce emissions, and we all understand we need energy. But they waste all this money on experimental, effectively, green hydrogen projects, waste all this money on very, very difficult and expensive offshore wind projects, even, solar energy exported to Southeast Asia, and the Snowy Hydro 2.0 that's gone like 20 times over budget. Yet they reject nuclear energy, saying it's too complicated and too expensive. I mean, how wrong are they on that, given that most developed countries are actually increasing their investment in nuclear?
Exactly. It makes no sense. We should not be keeping options off the table that dozens of other countries are using. We should have every option on the table. That is what Australians deserve. That is what we need to make sure that we can have the most affordable grid possible. And so we just have to lift the bans and put affordability and reliability first. Don't put ideological government targets first. Affordability must be first.
Yeah, so you're still running a petition where Australians are calling on their leaders to prioritise affordable and reliable energy. I think we've got a QR code we'll put there on screen if people want to actually sign up to that petition. How many people have you got signed up so far?
Over 10,000, but we want many more. So please sign up. Show Australia's leaders that you want affordable and reliable energy. The more people we have, the more pressure we can put on our government, on Australia's leaders everywhere to put affordability first.
Thanks for joining us, Zoe. I appreciate it. Zoe Hilton there from Affordable Energy Australia. It doesn't matter what kind of energy it is, make sure it's reliable and affordable. We're going to take a break. On the other side, Tom Switzer will join us. We'll check in on Trump and what's happening in the Middle East. Let's return to the war in the Middle East, and the Iran-backed Houthis have struck a cargo ship in the Red Sea, killing 6 people. Here's the latest from Fox News.
It was shortly after the Yemen-based and Iran-backed Houthis released this video purporting to show rockets being launched toward the port city of Mocha that word emerged of a vessel being struck in the Red Sea, with Yemeni authorities now confirming at least 4 crew members, 3 Pakistanis and 1 Indonesian, were killed, along with 2 members of the government-allied National Resistance Forces. The attack emphasizes the growing dual threat to global commerce if Houthi terrorists are able to freeze traffic in the Bab al-Mandab Strait in the same way that Iran has effectively frozen traffic in the Strait of Hormuz.
Let's welcome Tom Switzer, again columnist with The Australian. Tom, this is the other side of the Arabian Peninsula, of course, but the Houthis again backed by Iran. Iran, as in that piece, perhaps demonstrating that it can have a big effect on another key waterway.
Well, interestingly, these Shia rebels from Yemen, the Houthi rebels, have been relatively quiet throughout the course of the last 5 to 6 weeks of the war. But they're showing here that they're prepared to play hardball to, if not threaten, then shut down or try to shut down the Red Sea, which controls something like 12% of global oil and gas.
At the instigation of Iran, do we assume?
More than likely. I mean, they are in cahoots. I mean, the Iranian Shia militia is not just confined to Hezbollah and other Shia militia that have been fighting Sunni jihadists over the last decade or so. It's also the Houthi rebels that have been essentially in a civil war with the Saudi-backed, internationally recognised government of Yemen.
Yeah, and in the Persian Gulf, there are reports of US forces firing on a Panama flagship. This is the Americans enforcing their blockade on Iranian ports. Is that an escalation, or are we to dismiss this as the region seems to be in a bit of a holding pattern?
Well, I think it shows the United States, again, is going to great lengths to inflict considerable damage on Iranian exports out of the region. And they are doing to the Iranian ships what the Iranians and their Houthi rebels are trying to do to the Americans. Now, the air campaign clearly failed to make Iran conform to American expectations. So Trump's calculation now is to try to choke the regime economically while he imposes the naval blockade.
Now, let's get to the security concerns with Donald Trump. Quite incredible when he was in Ankara recently. We knew he switched planes to leave there. We knew there were security concerns. Now there are these reports that he was actually in a third plane, secreted off Air Force One in a food compartment, a food container. It goes to show that the threats against him must be very, very serious.
Well, in some respects, this is not surprising because the Iranians are hell-bent on revenge against Trump for not just ordering the assassination of the Ayatollah on February 28, which of course sparked this war, but they're also been carrying long-standing grievances since Trump, in his first term, ordered the assassination of the Quds General Soleimani in early 2020. So they've got an incentive to go after him, tit for tat, if you like. But what is extraordinary is the unconventional way he's been smuggled out of the country of Turkey.
Yeah, here's Donald Trump talking about it.
I go by Secret Service and the military. They wanted me to go on a different flight, a different plane, equal safety, but they wanted me to do it, so I do it. I do what they say.
Why did they want you to do that?
I guess there was a threat out there. I didn't really ask too much about it. I get a lot of threats.
Quite phlegmatic there from Donald Trump, which is not his usual posture. Let me drag you back to domestic politics. Yep. I want to get your thoughts on this. I've interviewed you, of course, in this documentary, The Fight for the Right. And looking at the polls today and hearing Pauline Hanson just now and what the opposition, the coalition, have been talking about, immigration. Immigration is key to the rise of one nation, and it looks like the coalition is trying to catch up on that policy area.
And the same thing is happening all across continental Europe. You go to France, where they're having a presidential election in May of next year. The Pauline Hanson of France, Marine Le Pen from National Rally, has a very good chance of winning the presidential election on this issue alone, immigration. And if you go all across the continent, there is a widespread backlash against illegal immigration, but also the high levels of legal mass immigration, precisely what's happening here.
Great to talk to you, Tom. Catch you next week.
Thanks, Chris.
Tom Switzer there. You can read his stuff in The Australian. But coming up, the coalition on immigration. I'll catch up with the Shadow Housing Minister, Andrew Bragg. He'll join me. Let's go back down to Canberra and catch up with the Shadow Housing Minister, Andrew Bragg. Thanks for joining us, Andrew. Big day for you. You spoke at the National Press Club. Big focus on immigration. Your leader, Angus Taylor, has been very reluctant to put numbers on how much a coalition government would reduce immigration numbers, but you've done that today, effectively about, what, 45,000 fewer people a year than the Labor government is shooting for?
Well, Chris, at the moment, they've got a net overseas migration figure of around 300,000. And if you want to close the housing gap, and the housing gap really refers to the gap between the number of houses built and the number of people who've come into the country, which is about 350,000, 400,000 over the last 4 years, then you need to be coming in around 180,000 in order to close that gap.
180,000 a year or over...
A year.
So that's a significant reduction you're talking about. And look, I should add that Labor has set targets in the past and always exceeded them. But you still wouldn't be cutting migration by as much as One Nation. They're suggesting they'll get down to about 145,000 a year.
Well, I mean, if your objective is to try and close the housing gap, then you need to look at the number of people who are coming into the country, the number of houses being built, and over the forward estimates, if you had a NOM in the range of 180,000, then you would, in fact, be able to close that gap that Labor has created through mismanaging migration. So, look, I mean, this is not the only way to solve the housing crisis, but it's an important part. And so I thought it was important to try and move the debate along today by putting a range on the table, and then we can work out the additional components that are required as well.
Yeah, now, you're no fan of One Nation, and One Nation have led the charge in recent times over immigration. Do you feel that the Coalition is following the lead from One Nation here, either because it's what the country needs or because of what you need to do to get back into public favour?
Well, the housing crisis is a crisis of Labor's making. They've collapsed supply by 30,000 a year. They have had an unmanaged migration program, and that has made life harder for Australians, including new Australians that we want to have as part of our community. Now, the Canadians had to reduce migration to help with their housing crisis, and that's been effective. So, I mean, this is not an unusual policy suite to have. I just think it reflects poorly on the political class that this has been allowed to run for the last number of decades. There was always going to be a link at some level between migration and housing, and what's happened is it's become particularly pronounced because Labor has collapsed housing supply so egregiously.
Yeah, so you're squeezing from both ends, supply and demand. You also spoke more broadly about the problems the Coalition has faced and your party, the Liberal Party in particular, over recent years. Let's have a listen to some of what you said.
The Liberal Party, though, has contributed to our malaise by not being prepared to develop enough alternative policy and to wear political risk. As someone who was a backbencher in the Morrison government, I wish I'd done more to stop the madness. I believe the new liberalism that Australia needs isn't socialism and it isn't conservatism seeking to turn back the clock.
I don't think you'd buy too many arguments in saying that the Coalition has been a bit policy shy in the past, but you wouldn't want to turn your back on conservatism, would you? A lot of Liberal voters consider themselves to be conservatives.
And that's what we need right now. I mean, I've never been more convinced of the virtue of liberalism and a conservative approach to government, limited government, than I have been right now. If you wanted to solve our economic woes, then you would be applying the most liberal approach to business regulation, taxation, to get the place growing again, because we're a stagnant, sclerotic economy, desperately needing liberalism. The problem we have is we haven't been liberal enough.
Yeah, what we need is small government, and it hasn't been argued for strongly enough. Thanks for joining us, Andrew. I appreciate it. Andrew Bragg there, Senator Andrew Bragg, who is the Shadow Housing Minister. I want to stick with migration, though, and go to the UK, where the migrant crisis isn't getting any better under the new Prime Minister there, of course. What was a problem with small boats crossing the English Channel seems to have been turbocharged now. Just take a look at this. This is a supposed small boat with more than 200 people crammed onto it in this mega dinghy, they're calling it, attempting to break through the UK's borders. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has put a price on this vessel.
Estimates are that boatload alone will cost the taxpayer £25 million over the lifetime of those people. But look, bigger than that, I've said it before, I'll say it again, this is a national security emergency. And if Andy Burnham can't see that, he's not fit to be Prime Minister.
Joining me live from the UK is writer and broadcaster Esther Kraku. Esther, thanks for joining us again. This issue is palpable for Brits. They're seeing it on their television screens every night, presumably.
I think it's even more than that. It's gone from the realm of the hypothetical to basically very much reality. I mean, Andy Burnham, in the most tone-deaf way possible, said that middle-class areas need to start doing their fair share and taking in more migrants and asylum seekers. And it's kind of ironic that he's saying this, because we already know that our asylum system is extremely broken, and it's allowing people like this, all of whom basically are economic migrants. Let's not be naive about that to take advantage of the system that's also being buoyed and propped up by a charity industrial complex and a horde of human rights lawyers that couldn't get work any other way than trying to find ways to let these kinds of people infiltrate Britain. But what he's touched on is the fact that our asylum system was already so broken that, the overwhelming majority of refugees are sent to just 10 cities across the UK, which, if you think about it, is really concentrated in places like Glasgow, London, really densely populated areas that don't even have the social service bandwidth to take on all of these people. And now, instead of saying, actually, we're going to tackle this, he's not only arguing that what we see before our very eyes is not happening and that the migrant crisis is actually being handled. Can you believe it? But he's also saying that middle-class areas need to take in more of these people, presumably to see their sense of security and house prices fall through the floor. So, I mean, this has shifted from just being something that you see on the news to people seeing these strange men, overwhelmingly men from parts of the world where, let's face it, women's rights and gay rights are just virtually non-existent. Women are treated like hairless, perfumed cattle, and gay people would be rightly thrown off buildings if they could get away with it. Not rightly, but in their opinions. And you're just thinking these are the kinds of people that you want to put in our neighborhoods, in like sort of the areas where most of these politicians are making these decisions and are living themselves and have yet to open their own doors to these people. So it's kind of a horror story that you really couldn't write unless you were paid a lot of money to, because the level of ineptitude here is incredible.
I think we've got the Prime Minister speaking on that very topic. Have a look.
We cannot have a situation where it's only the poorest communities in the country that receive, all of the dispersal of refugees and asylum seekers. I do believe all parts of the country need to work to play their part. It's a challenging issue. We're working at it. We understand people's concerns.
Yeah, it's familiar to us here in Australia as well, Lester, because back here when we had these issues, it was often the virtue signallers from the leafy suburbs who were parading the rights of illegal immigrants, but they never went to live in their suburbs. It was the poorer suburbs that had to deal with them. But I can see in your context, he's promising to spread the pain even further. It's going to continue to be a massive issue in British politics, and we'll keep in touch with it through you. But just before I let you go, I wanted to get an update on the droughts. So we're all very familiar with droughts in Australia, but it's creating havoc across the UK and Europe at the moment.
Yeah, well, Andy Burnham is now going to chair a COBRA meeting because it's incredible. Summer seems to happen every year, and yet it always takes our politicians by surprise, which, again, is a kind of ineptitude that you really couldn't write about in a horror film. And now we're having to buy more energy from mainland Europe at a higher price because, get this, our solar farms don't work very well in the heat, which completely defeats the purpose of a solar farm. I mean, honestly, you can't write this stuff. Honestly,
you cannot write this stuff.
No words.
I saw a lot of solar panels in Germany and the Czech Republic over the winter, and they're all covered in snow. I didn't think that was a very, very wise investment in electricity. Thanks for joining us, Esther. I appreciate it. Esther Kraku there, live from the UK. We've got to get to a break. On the other side, the Wednesday Wrangle with Justin and James. Talk about taxpayers forking out hundreds of millions of dollars on rent for empty public service offices. Let's get into the Wednesday Wrangle with James Bolt here on the desk with me and Justin Smith, broadcaster and commentator, joining us from Melbourne. Look, let's get through this quickly. Melongate. I don't want a long expose on this from each of you, though. Has Albo got a problem here, or have we all made it up, Justin?
We do have a problem with politicians trying to be funny.
Yes.
I say this to all the politicians for the future. We don't need your entertainment. It's not what you're there for. And every time they try, they fail. And yet, bless their hearts, they keep coming back and trying again. I don't think it's going to cause any hassles between Australia and Japan. I think that's been a little bit overcooked, but it is embarrassing. I'd rather see the Prime Minister doing something else, to be frank.
Yeah, I just think it's embarrassing, James, to see these so-called feminists on Labor's front bench to pretend that there was no double entendre here.
I know, and you feel for them sometimes, don't you? You go like they would love to be ripping into anyone else who wasn't Prime Minister Albanese.
Yes.
They know they'd get the phone call the second it happened. You mentioned if Prime Minister Albanese, if he's got a problem here. I am a little sceptical because remember when the Kylie Minogue story was the big takeaway from Bush Deep podcast? His approval ratings in the next News24 polls went up. So
Yes.
I do think like there are, you know, to be honest, an unfortunate amount of Australians who just look at this guy. I'm not encouraging him. I think it's stupid. I think it was dumb and he should apologise and it was all terrible and I can't believe he did it. But there are some people out there who look at it and go like, hey, he's one of us. And that's, you know, unfortunate.
I must admit it did occur to me. Let's have a look at this world leader, this European Prime Minister, the Prime Minister of Italy. It did occur to me that it would be a bit of a problem if we get those pictures up. I'm trying to show you the Prime Minister of Italy. There she is, the Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni. I thought, now, spelt M-E-L-O-N-I, I thought this could be a problem if Anthony Albanese ever has to deal with her. And the brilliant Johannes Leek in The Australian this morning has picked up on this thought brilliantly. He's got Tony Burke saying, look, Italy's tackled immigration. Maybe we should ask Meloni how she did it. And Albo says, whoa, Meloni, I like the sound of that. It's pretty. He's ripe for the picking now,
trouble,
isn't
Chris.
he, Justin?
You'll get in trouble.
He's ripe for the picking on this stuff, Albo, isn't he?
Chris. You're going to get in strife, mate. If you talk like this and show cartoons like that, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to be the conversation.
Don't do the hand
next time around.
It's all about the hand movements. It's all about the lack of an apology. Let us move on. I love this story. We all know that public servants are leading the charge when it comes to working from home. They've struck union deals with the federal government to give them the right to work from home. But, James, it doesn't stop us paying squillions for the offices that they don't turn up at.
Yeah, I'm worried we're going to learn the wrong lesson from a story like that, how much money we're paying for offices that are sitting empty because they're all working from home. Because naturally the inclination is going, oh, well, why are we paying for all these offices then? The idea has to be, stop working from home. Like your public servants, you're that thing. We want to be paying for these offices, but you have to turn up and go there.
Yeah, exactly. This is my view. We all want flexibility, Justin, but for people to do their job properly and to the best of their ability and to be, frankly, for their own well-being and socialisation, we need them to turn up at work.
Yeah, there's a lot of good work that gets done at home by people who work at home. Some of them are in the private sector. Some of them are working on the public dime. The problem here is we shouldn't be penalising the workers. If there's a problem with too much office space, then surely
he wants to get rid of the office space.
And the people in charge of renting these spaces should be moving.
Yeah.
They should be, yeah, he gave me the idea. They should be moving with the times, with the workers. As the workers work from home, have less office space. Come on. Surely that's the solution.
Next, Justin, you lefties are going to be telling us that the government should be building studies for public servants so that they have their offices at home and the taxpayers can fund it.
You can see the thread, because if you're spending all this money on this, if you're spending all this money on this great office spaces,
what a really good idea.
If you spend all this money on these great office spaces, and then you go, OK, we'll have less good office spaces to make sure that we're not saving money, that's going to encourage more working from home because no one wants to go to the worse offices, which is going to lead to even worse offices. Suddenly every public servant's working from home.
Dear, oh dear. Talking about home, we've got a housing crisis in this country. Now, the Commonwealth Bank announced a mega profit today, but they've revealed that their number of mortgages being written has plunged by 15%, and they're starting to look out for problems with mortgage stress in the future. Here's the Chief Executive of the Commonwealth Bank, Matt Comyn.
It's just an important feature of banking that you also have to prepare for the worst. Even though it's incredibly unlikely, and there's different ways that we do that. We do that through what's known as stress testing, both as an individual institution, we do that at an industry level. And also, when we report, as we did today, we talk about our loan loss provisions.
That full interview with Ross Greenwood on Business Weekend. But, Justin, if the number of mortgages being written is down by 15%, how is Labor helping young home buyers into the housing market? It doesn't make sense.
Oh, it's an extraordinary whack, and the problem is that feeds in again to the next time around, doesn't it? Because when confidence drops, it drops again. It keeps dropping, and I don't know if we can see a way out of this. And certainly the plan isn't working, but I don't see how we get out of this. I like the fact that the bank can still make a buck. Gee, they never fail, do they? There's always a dollar for them.
Yeah, thank God the banks make a buck. It'd be a pretty bad situation if the banks weren't making money, given most of us have got our super tied up in them and the rest of it, and they're a pillar of the whole system. I'll come to you in a moment, James. I just want to show you, I want to jump to Gen Z struggling with the cost of living, housing crisis being part of it. Let's have a look at what some of them have had to say.
The housing crisis and just the income of young people versus how much you have to pay for rent is very different now than it was for older generations.
I feel like we have it harder with the economy right now. Everything's so expensive, and it's harder for our age people to get jobs and stuff as well. So I say we have it harder.
A lot of pessimism there, James. People just a little younger than you.
Yeah, just a little younger. This is the main thing in society. When you have young people that are getting into adulthood and they feel genuinely pessimistic about where the world is going and they don't feel that they're going to start getting ahead, suddenly ideas we thought were done with start to get a little enticing to people. So, just
socialism,
communism on the other side, on the far right, these ideas start getting quite popular if every solution you've been given is...
You're right. But don't worry, because the Labor MPs are very happy. Here's Cara Cook is her name, the member for Bonham. Justin, James, thanks for your thoughts. We all think there's a few problems around, but that's the way they're spending your tax dollars. I'll see you tomorrow night. Here's Peter Credlin.